Hi, and welcome to the Virgin River Cafe Rewatch podcast. I'm Tracy,
I'm Gigi.
and welcome to a new season.
Yeah,
We're just trudging through this, aren't we?
having a good old time.
I know we got, let's see, 3 seasons left. So technically, we are completely
In the
halfway through
yeah,
everything that's available out.
yeah.
Takes a while, though. I mean, one episode a week. That's going to be a year and a couple of months of our lives to get through it. We'll have to
We'll get there.
We'll have to figure out what we're going to do after. I don't know. I don't
Well,
know.
hopefully we'll have another season to talk about.
Oh, I don't know if it's going to be that fast. You know them. They got a film and then they got post production. It's anywhere between 7 months and a year between when one drops and the next one drops. And I have a
Well,
feeling by the time we get through it, by the time we finish, we should be just about ready within a couple of months of season 7 dropping.
okay.
So
We'll
we'll
see
see.
how that goes.
We'll see. So what are you drinking today? What is your caffeinated
Today's
beverage of choice?
my caffeinated choice. So I had a friend who gave me these loose tea balls.
Oh,
They're
okay.
and what they are is that you basically it's like tea leaves all wrapped up into a little ball,
Okay.
and you dump them into the your hot water, and then they bloom, and they have the most amazing fragrance,
Oh.
and they taste really well. They're strong, because they're basically concentrated tea leaves,
Hmm.
but
Do you need
um,
less? Will it last longer?
well,
Because
well, you just make yourself a bigger cup of it,
ah,
basically.
got it.
So instead of 8 ounces, it's more like
Oh,
16 ounces,
nice.
which is good because it'll last me a several couple hours.
Oh, good.
But yeah, so that's what I'm having. So I'm having this bloom tea. I don't know the name of the fragrance of this particular tea that I'm taking, but oh, it's so good.
Good. Nice. I'm making a homemade. I should say I made a homemade, like a cinnamon dolce iced drink today because cinnamon dolce is my favorite
I
flavor. It's
know.
that vanilla cinnamon
Mm, yeah.
kind of flavor, and I have my own syrup that I made, and so I just made a coffee at home today. I didn't feel like going out. For
That's
us,
okay.
it's a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Yes, and with Gigi's schedule change, we
Uh,
we're working on weekends, so to speak.
we'll get back to weekdays soon.
Yeah, not
Anyway,
for a while. You got 8 months, 7 months left, so it's gonna be a minute.
yeah. Anyway.
It's gonna be a minute. All right,
Oh,
so let's get started.
okay. So this is season 4, episode 1. Be my baby.
All right.
Mm-mm-mm.
The description says Mel seeks medical care with a nervous Jack by her side. Hope's confusion puts Doc in a tough position, and a new doctor joins the practice. Hmm. This is going to be interesting. We have introduction of some new character and a lot of questions. Because remember, when we left our friends in Virgin River, um, and this is not much after, because remember, we leave a season. Generally, sometimes there's like moments that go by and new season starts. And sometimes in one of the seasons, it was like 3 weeks later. So let's see where we pick up from where we left off of Jack proposing and getting or trying to propose, I should say, and getting halted because she's pregnant and she don't know who the daddy is. Big oops.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Who did that?
Yeah, who's the daddy? Because, every show needs a who's the daddy scandal. I mean, this particular one, this particular show, I think it's sort of, they like that theme because they use it more than once. And that's okay. We'll figure that out. I mean, sometimes we don't know that they're using it, but they're using it. But hey, whatever.
Mhm.
And here we are. And I know people, as soon as they see it, they're like, oh my gosh, she's pregnant. And they've skipped that far in advance because we see Mel and Jack walking through this lovely river with like lily pads and a path that cuts through it, zigzaggy, and she's about as pregnant as ready to pop could possibly be. And the two of them are just walking, and she's like, I like the name Catherine. And he's like, well, yeah, that's really pretty. And she is very pregnant. Like, very pregnant.
Girls are ready to drop any moment
Oh,
now.
yeah. And Jack's, and then they're like, Indiana. And it's like, for a boy or a girl. He goes, well, she's like, we could name it after you. And she's like, Jack Jr. And she's like, uh-huh. She goes, or maybe JJ for short. It's very cute, the two of them having this conversation about baby names, because it's a place that people would love them to get to, especially knowing her history and all the infertility and losing a baby. And it's like, oh, isn't that so sweet? And he's like, I like that. And she's like, well, we also have to consider Mark. And that's when reality will smack you right in the face.
That kind of got all of us like, huh?
Like, what? She's like, Mark. And he's like, as in a name? He goes, she's like, well, if that's what he wants. And she gives a nice smile and looks in the distance as Jack turns around. And we see Mark walking forward toward them with a smile on his face. And Jack is looking at him like, what is Mark doing here? And she looks at him just as calm and sweet and loving as you could possibly be. Well, the baby might be his, remember? And Jack
Good.
is looking like,
Mm-hmm.
huh? The
Yeah.
huh look on his face. And she looks at
It's
him like,
what?
come on. And she gives him a lovely smile. And Mark looks at Jack. Hi, Jack. And just looks right at Mel and gives her just the sweetest smile. And he's like, hi, sweetheart. And he reaches in and touches the side of her face and gives her a kiss. And she smiles at him just with all the love in the world. And Jack looks at him like if looks could kill, Mark would be under the lily pads. Right.
It's like, well, also the fact is you're touching my woman.
Right?
Now, so.
Like, and you're dead. Like, I mean, I'm not even, like, let's not even talk about the fact that he's dead. The fact that
Exactly.
he's kissing his woman. Mm. And Mark just looks at him like, innocent, smile,
Yep.
just like, hey, dude, how's it going? How have you been? Let's talk about a baby. Let's talk about it. And then Jack wakes up. Now, interesting, this is the only scene, I believe the only scene that there has been, and this is through 6 seasons, that Mark and Jack are in the same scene together.
Same scene. Yeah, exactly.
They've never been in a scene together. I mean, they're in this show, you know, Mark's been in it a whole bunch. I mean, obviously not half as much as Jack, but ingrained in the show. But this is the only scene that they've ever were in it together. Poor Jack. Poor Jack wakes up like, that's not just a dream, darling. That is a freaking nightmare. like that is his worst fear, is that, oh my God, because they don't know. It's literally an unknown.
Exactly.
Now, this is early in the morning, late at night. We don't know what happened after their conversation. We can only guess at this point. But if he's having nightmares about it, I mean, the poor man already has PTSD and night terrors. Like, could we, let's just add to it. You know, let's just add to it, because the man doesn't have enough stress in his life. Part of the fact that I'm still shocked she even did this. And I actually rewatched that interview of the two of them, and it was during season 6. It was part of the behind the scenes they did while they were filming season 6. And they were asking about, like, looking back, you know, regret, you know, things that the characters had done and different, you know, just asking them different questions. And both of them were like, that was the storyline that they objected to the most. That, like, they would not have done this. She would not have gone and gotten an IVF, and he would not have broken up with her. And they're like, they understand why, but it's like, really? But they, you know, here we are.
Mm-hmm.
It propelled the story.
Mm-hmm.
And for writers, that's the goal. But now we're in a pickle. Now we are in a pickle.
Mm-hmm.
So that was our opening scene, and now we, of course, get to enjoy the beautiful scenery and the birds flying and the view of the Virgin River. So serene. Yeah, life's not serene. We're dealing with a lot. There's a lot going on. Okay, one of my absolute favorite scenes of this episode, because they they take this with a grain of salt, and I just I just love this scene. It's hilarious in a sad, pathetic way, but I just love it. So Mel is sitting there speaking to someone, and she's like, "So, like I said in my email, our situation is unique." And she's trying to explain. And Jack kind of like raises his eyebrows, kind of like nodding, like, "Oh yeah, yeah, it's unique." And so she's like, "About 5 weeks ago. Now, keep in mind, now we know where we are. They ended the season. They did propel. They did jump ahead. So we're about 5 weeks." So she was like, if she had done the IVF within a day or two, usually they make you rest for a day, and maybe the next day she flew out or something. And then she was with Jack, or she was pregnant before she went. She was only there a few days with Joey. So it's about 5 to 6 weeks ago that this happened. So that's what we're looking at. We've propelled 5 weeks for the new season, which is, trying to figure out timeline on this show is, I swear, you need like, I don't know. I don't even know what you need.
It's a mathematical.
It's somebody from MIT, I think, needs to come in and help us figure this out, because I don't. I've tried. I've pretty much narrowed it down, but it can be general, and you have to use a lot of context clues, and it's a lot. It's a lot, but we're figuring it out. So we've gone 5 weeks. So she says, about 5 weeks ago, I had 2 embryos implanted via natural cycle FET in LA. Now, what that means is that she was naturally ovulating during that time, or her body was supposed to naturally be ovulating. Because sometimes they give you all kinds of hormones to make you ovulate so that your body is ready for the embryos. But it must have been, the gods must have been with her, timing, that while she was in LA, she was able to do this, because they won't let you do it unless your hormones are at the right level to be accepting of embryos.
Talk about luck.
Yeah, I know. And FET is frozen embryo transfer. So when she had tried her IVF before, so what happens is they stimulate your ovaries, you make a bunch of eggs, they retrieve them. Generally, you do a fresh cycle, which are ones that are made right, they've just taken them out. They're going to put some back when they've fertilized them. And then the rest of them, they freeze. And they generally freeze them in groups of a couple at a time. And so, depending on how many eggs you've retrieved, you have a certain number of cycles left. So let's say she's done a couple of IVFs, then she has one pair left. And I don't believe they can separate them. I think you have to use them together. So this was like an all or nothing. This was like last ditch effort without, if she left those there, then they were left there. If she used them, there's nothing left. This was her last frozen embryos. So she used them. And that was 5 weeks ago. And, let's see. And Jack just looks only mildly uncomfortable.
Yeah, because he don't want to be there. Mm-hmm.
Well, and the doctor, love her. She's just sitting there, Dr. Larson. She's just sitting there with like a puzzled yet confused yet edge of her seat kind of look on her face. And she's like, okay. And Mel's like, I've had fertility issues, so I didn't even know if I could get pregnant, which before she used to say she can't get pregnant. So I guess the fact that she got pregnant, she switched that to be like, I didn't even know if I could. Because she was clearly living life like she couldn't. I mean,
yeah.
And that's usually when it happens. Sorry, people. That's just when you think Murphy's Law will come and smack you in the face all day long.
Yes, it does. That's how we have our little one.
Mm-hmm.
Our little one. My lovely godchild.
Mm-hmm. Just when you think you can't get pregnant, you generally do. So she's like, we had broken up. And then she smiles. She's like, and then she looks at Jack and she's like, and we got back together. And and they're kind of like not wanting to say anything but kind of saying everything. It's like and the doctor's like, okay, so the embryos, she goes, they're mine and my and Jack pipes in, her husband's. And Mel looks kind of uncomfortable in her seat and she's like, yeah, my husband's. And the doctor's like, who's not you? And Jack's like, correct, smiling, just calm as anything, calm dimples, just, you know. And the doctor, of course, because she has to do her due diligence, is your husband aware that paternity is in question? And Jack looks at Mel because she's got to take this one. She's like, no, he died a little over a year ago. And she gives her a little smile. And the doctor's like, oh.
I'm sure this is the first one for her.
Yeah, and she's looking at Mel and looking at Jack and looking at Mel and looking at Jack like, and Jack, my favorite line. He goes, yeah, we like to keep things as complicated as humanly possible. and they all kind of chuckle, but it breaks the tension.
Yes,
and it basically explains this is where we're at. Okay, she's pregnant, could be mine, could be his. Let's figure it out. You know, we're here. Doctor, help us. So the doctor's like, we can resolve this using a non-invasive paternity test, also referred to as NIP, which they did not have. Many years ago, the only way to find out paternity was like a very large needle into your belly, removing some amniotic fluid and testing that.
Yep, that's true.
But now I believe it's a blood test. So, I mean, or a DNA test of, like her, it's a blood test, and him, it's obviously, it's, you know, the scraping in your, you know, the DNA like they do. You know, let me scrape the inside of your cheek. But it's a very simple test now. And Mel's like, right.
A long way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've come along. I mean, when I had my IVFs, that was 25 years ago now. Dang. Yep. That was a long, wow. It was like 1999, 1998. Yeah. Wow. That's a long time ago because my son is 22 now. Yep. Crazy. So, well, that's when I started doing them because, you know, it takes a while. For not everybody's not lucky and doesn't have it on the first time.
Yeah. We definitely had trials and tribulations.
Oh, yes. We several. That's why I have all the knowledge. So, the doctor's suggesting that they do this NIP test, NIP. And Mel's like, right, yeah. And she looks at Jack like, what do you think? Now, Jack is kind of on a different page. He's like, I just like to focus on you and having a healthy baby. Holds her hand and he goes, that's all that matters to me. And she smiles and the doctor's like, well, mom and baby's well-being is the number one priority. She's like, as a specialist in high-risk pregnancy. And he's like, what, high risk? As in, she's like, higher complications before, during, and after birth. She's like, given Mel's history with infertility and her intrapartum death, that's the one, the stillborn.
Mm-hmm.
And Mel is like, you can see his eyes glossing over at this point. Mm-hmm. Like, this is the worry, the nervousness, things he didn't even think about. I mean, he's saying, oh, we're just gonna have a baby. Like, no big deal, you know, like, we're just gonna do this. Mm-hmm. And the doctor continues, she'll need additional screening, advanced testing, extensive monitoring. And he's looking at Mel like nervous. Like, and it's hard to say, is he nervous for Mel? Is he nervous for the baby? Is this freaking him out? Like,
yes.
Yes. And yes. Is he's just kind of like freaking out. Mel's just kind of nodding like, yeah, okay. And it's true. Once you've had, like, people that go into general infertility, when you haven't had either miscarriages or stillbirths or whatever, they do general monitoring. But the more trouble you have, the more monitoring you have to go through. And when they say extensive, they are not kidding. It could be a couple times a week. You have to go in and you got to get all kinds of tests, blood tests and monitoring and ultrasounds, and everything is a check, constant. And you have to take sometimes extra medicine or extra shots, and it's very invasive. It can feel very invasive. But once you're pregnant,
which is why it's so expensive.
It's very expensive. Once you get pregnant, they do everything that can possibly be done to hold that pregnancy.
Yes.
Because it's the first 8 to 12 weeks that are the most precious, because that's when miscarriages happen. So a lot of times people miscarry, they don't even know they're pregnant. So, but when you're going through IVF, like, you literally know the second everything starts, and you're like 8 minutes pregnant. When you find out, like, everything is so monitored that it's almost too much.
Yeah.
It can feel very invasive, but you find out a lot. You're very aware of how everything is going, which I guess is a good thing, because once you get pregnant, staying pregnant is the goal, and having constant validation that you're still pregnant is comforting in a way, but it's also it can rattle you. Anywho, so Mel gets to go through all of that. That should be fun. And now we are at Hope's house, and it's been 5 weeks, so clearly she's out of the hospital. Now, behind the scenes, it's a new season. COVID restrictions have been lifted somewhat, and even though when they were filming, they were still doing all COVID restrictions. I think they did that until like season 5 through season 5. Is crazy, because Canada's a little different. Where they film is a little different than the U.S. And Annette O'Toole was able to come back, and she's part of the cast again. Yay. But now, since they changed the storyline with her accident and her traumatic brain injury, we now have Hope, and not the same Hope that we remember. So Hope is
different.
She's a little different. So Hope is sitting out by the picnic table in the backyard, just kind of staring out into space. She's got herself a walker, a cup of tea, and here comes Doc. And he's like, wow, you barely touched that incredible breakfast. He must have made her breakfast. She goes, the eggs smell weird. And he's like, remember the neurologist said that your sense of taste and smell might be compromised for a little while. He goes, why don't you have some toast? She's like, what's the point? I can't stand eggs. I'm not going to magically enjoy toast. And so he sits down next to her and he's like, honey, recovering from a brain injury takes time. You've been home a couple days, so, just go easy on yourself. That means that she spent another more than a month in the hospital recovering. And she looks older.
Yeah.
I think being in the hospital, and her hair looks grayer. She looks more withdrawn. They didn't make her up to look like Hope, full of spunk and sass.
Yeah.
So they've physically, aged her while she went through this. So she's like, I have no energy. All I do is sit around. How much easier can I go? Which is true.
Yes.
Taking it easy, but geez.
Yeah, but Hope, she's always been get up and go.
Right.
So this
feels different. Fortunately, she did not, she still knows everybody. She still has her faculties. Now, granted, they're not all up to par, but that will come with time. So she goes to try to get up and nearly falls over. And he was like, hey, no, that's what a cane is for. He helps her stand up. And she's like, it's for balance. And she's like, I'm not an invalid. He's like, correct. He goes, but her perception of the world around her is off. And he uses this big word. And she's like, English, please. And he's like, your brain is having trouble sensing where parts of your body are. She's like, they're in the same place they've always been. Thank God she still has her sass. He goes, oh, yeah, all right. Good conversation. And she looks at these flowers, and she's like, Vernon, where did these hydrangeas come from? He goes, oh, Tara brought them by before you came home from the hospital. And she's like, is Lily mad at me? And he's like, why would you ask that? She goes, because she hasn't come over. I've called her twice, and she hasn't called me back.
Oh, boy.
And he's kind of very uncomfortable. She's worried. She looks worried, and he's looks uncomfortable. And I think it just dawns on him that she does not remember finding out that Lily died. And when you have a traumatic brain injury, a lot of time your short-term memory kind of gets a little jumbled, and some people will ask the same questions over and over again. And especially if, say, it was an accident and someone was with you in the car in the accident and that person died, and they have to you have to tell them over and over again, and they have to relive it, which is very traumatic. And I think he's thinking that might be the case, that, oh my God, she's going to have to relive me telling her that Lily died over and over again, which is just so incredibly sad. So Mel and Jack have now left the doctor's appointment and they're strolling the lovely little shops of Grace Valley. And Mel is like, so what do you think of the doctor? And she's like, I like her. And he's like, she's great. And he goes, I just didn't realize you were going to be a high risk category. And she looks at him. She's like, well, sweetheart, I mean, I had a stillborn. Like the reality of it all for her is there. But for him, it's like reminder, like, remember what I went through? Like, this isn't going to be easy. I can't just get pregnant like everybody else. It's, and he was like, well, yeah, I know. But I think hearing her say it, like break it down to all the things that she's going to have to go, that brought it home. And I think he's just worried.
Because I think the thing is, the difference is when Charmaine was pregnant, or is pregnant.
I know.
Well, let's not.
I know, but it happened.
Her biggest problem was keeping food down and staying hydrated. But she wasn't, and yes, she is high risk, but
in a way different way.
In a way different way, because
that's his only. I mean, he has nieces. He said he's had nieces, but remember, he doesn't live by any of his family, so he's not walking through any of those experiences with his sisters who have kids. Charmaine is probably, I mean, besides people in town who he wasn't close to having babies, I mean, Charmaine is it. And dealing with her and her high-risk pregnancy is very, very different because he's not in love with her. He's not wanting to be there for her. He was out of responsibility. He was
obligation.
Right, obligation. He's there with her. And he was calming her down when she's freaking out because of a high-risk problem. But that passed. They dealt with it, and she moved on, and she's fine now. And she's just living her life as a pregnant woman, basically for the next 5 seasons. But beside the point. Right? So this is very different because the care and love he has for Mel is very, very different than Charmaine. This is going to be a lot tougher for him to deal with because of how he feels and how much closer to the situation. It just makes it harder that baby might not even be his. So it's like as much as he loves her and wants this baby, it may or may not be his. So, messy.
Yep, that's likely.
Yeah, Mel explains. She goes, sorry, she goes, but it's going to be fine. And he's like, how do you know that? He puts his arm around her. How do you know that? And she's like, well, I don't, but she's like, I don't know. I feel calm. She's like, it's like my body knows that this pregnancy is different. He's like, great. Well, I'm glad one of us is taking everything, feels like everything is under control. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I don't know. I just think we should choose to have faith. He's like, hey, is that all we need? And she's like, yeah. She goes, and maternity clothes, because last time I blew up like a balloon. She's like, I'm going to ask Jo if she has any left. And, the look on Jack's face, like, I don't know about, And she's like, what? He's like, I didn't think we were supposed to tell anyone until after the first trimester. And Mel's like, well, it's not a rule. I mean, it's really personal choice. And she's like, why? He's like, well, our situation is a little complicated. And it's bound to be questions. He goes, so I thought maybe we could keep it between us just for now. She's trying to understand what he's saying. He's like, okay, so you don't want me to tell Joey? I mean, she is my sister. I tell her everything. And he's like, well, okay. Could we wait like just like a week? Like till at least after next week's appointment? I mean, he's like pleading in a way, but trying to be really nice about it. He's like, just give me, and then he backs it up. Like, give me a little time to like wrap my head around this. She's like, I can do that. And he's shocked. He's like, wow, that was easy. I was literally expecting more back and forth. Like, he goes, you really are relaxed, aren't you? And she's just big smile from ear to ear. She's like, I am. He's like, you're literally grinning from ear to ear right now. And the both of them are just big smiles. So cute. I mean, she's like laughing. Like, she's like, we're having a baby. And he's like, hell yeah, we are. He actually looks relaxed about it. Like, remember before, like, just talking about having a baby made
Oh yeah,
his chest get tight.
he was. Yeah, he was heaving.
Yeah, but it's like when she told him before he found out that the baby might be Mark's, he didn't propose and was like, "I told you I was all in. Like, that's fine. We're gonna deal with it. I'm good. I'm good." Like, it instantly was like full acceptance.
Mm.
It just was a kick in the pants that now this little complication, you want to call it? I don't even know. What would you call it?
Yeah, it's
We have a slight complication. We're just not sure if you're the daddy. Like, oh, like really? Like, why would you do this to him? Oh, God.
Mm.
Like,
Who's the
like they weren't going to get back together. I mean, come on, Mel.
Mm.
You knew he would figure out he's an idiot. I mean, it took him a minute because he's sometimes emotionally not that bright. It took a few people to
Kick him in the you know where.
kick him in the butt and have him reevaluate his life choices. So, once he came to his senses, gosh. Okay, so we are back at Doc's. We're at the clinic. Doc is just pondering his life choices over the coffee machine and out the window, and Mel walks in. He's like, "Morning." And he's sort of tapping the coffee machine. She goes, it helps to turn it on. Because I guess he filled it and he was just standing there waiting for something to happen.
Mm.
And Mel's like, "How's Hope doing?" And Doc's like, "Not well. She doesn't remember me telling her that Lily passed away." And Mel's like, "Well, when did you tell her?" And he's like, "Well, when she was down in South Carolina, like before she came home." And he's thinking that her subconscious probably buried it because she keeps asking if Lily is mad at her. And Mel's like, "Well, what did you say?" Because I panicked and told her, "Well, we'll talk about Lily when I get home." Ugh, goodness. She's like, "So Mel's like, "Do you want me to talk to her?" He goes, No, I don't want anything to impact her recovery. We're just going to take it a day at a time. And then he's like, "Well, maybe we should lie to her until she gets better." Like, that's his brilliant idea. And Mel's like,
No.
She's like, "I think we really need to be honest. Right now, she depends on you. And if she finds out you lied, oof, it might destroy her sense of security." And he's like, "Yeah, you're right." She's like, "If you want to go home, I can cover for you." He goes, "No, Joellen's at the house, and I want to be here when Dr. Hayek arrives." And Mel is like, "I can't even believe that you hired somebody over the phone." Like, went through all these interviews, and then he goes and hires somebody over the phone. He goes, "Well, his dad and I went to medical school together, and I've known Cameron since he was in shorts."
Oh, great.
He goes, "Look, I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm not. I mean, he was nice on the phone." It's like, it's just, I don't remember being late on my first day. I'm just saying. And then from behind, you hear, "Actually, I'm on time." And Doc is like, "Oh, there he is, Cameron. We've just been talking about you." Nice looking young man. He goes, "Dr. Hayek, this is Mel Monroe, our nurse practitioner." Introduces them, and he goes, "Please call me Cameron, and it's nice to meet you in person." She's like, "You too." And he goes, "How was your drive from San Diego?" He goes, "Oh, not bad. I spent the night in Big Sur, and I wouldn't mind living there." He goes, "Well, I hope you feel at home with us." And he cleared a little counter space here in the exam room for your computer, and if you need anything else, let me know. He goes, "Oh, nope, that should be fine, thanks. And once you're settled, we can discuss logistics over a cup of coffee." He goes, "I'm going to go get the rest of my stuff." And he points at Mel, and he's like, "I look forward to working with you too, Mel." She's like, "Great." And then Mel gives Doc a look. And she's like, "Well, I'm offended." And he's like, "Why?" She's like, "Well, when I first arrived, I was greeted with a shotgun and asked to leave the premises." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, my memory of those events is vastly different than yours." "Don't deny it, Doc. Come on." And she's like, "Uh-huh." And he goes, "And also, FYI, I still don't technically have counter space." And he's like,
She's on the
He's like, "How can I make it up to you?" He's like, "I don't know. I have to think about it." He's like, "Okay." God, they've come so far.
Tell me about it.
Oh my gosh, they have come so far. It's shocking. Like, if you don't see it, you don't believe it, So Cameron comes back and he's like, I need to get the Wi-Fi password. And Doc yells from the other room and he's like, ha, I got no idea. And he waves him off. Mel's like, listen, anything regarding the 21st century, just ask me. Because he doesn't know. And he's like, okay. He goes, so what kind of software do you use for your scheduling? She's like, we're more of an analog office. And he's like, so that means, she's like, you're going to need a pen. Right. Like when we said country doctor, we mean country doctor. I mean, the fact that they even have computers.
Yeah, exactly.
Doc thinks that they're, going to end civilization or something.
And the fact that they have Wi-Fi is even bigger.
Thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, going somewhere? He's like, oh, I have a job interview because we're back at the bar. Hold on. Oh, let me back up because I couldn't see who that was. It was Bree. So we're at Jack's bar. Jack's clearing some tables and he sees Bree and he's like, going somewhere? And she's like, I have a job interview. And he goes, oh, that's cool. He goes, what, you expect me to believe that your lawyer called and you had nothing to do with it? He goes, she's your friend. Maybe she needs some help. He goes, yeah, well, I mentioned you're available. She goes, oh, you're such a bad liar. He goes, well, I wasn't sure you'd want to meet her. Well, why wouldn't I? And Jack's like, well, with everything that happened with Brady, I wasn't sure you wanted to stay in Virgin River. She's like, if I moved every time a guy screwed me over, I'd be living out of my suitcase. And he's like, well, aren't you living out of your suitcase? She's like, seriously. She's sorry. I couldn't help. It's like, next time, try harder. She's like, he's like, this is good. This is good. I like the banter. She's like, and that means... And Jack's like, I really want you to stay. And she kind of gives him a look like, what? And he's like, isn't a brother allowed to care about his sister? And he's like, well, what do you mean? Can't a brother want to spend time with his sister? And she's like, yeah, brothers who aren't you can. He goes, well, I'm trying to change that. I mean, I really enjoy getting to know you again. She's like, you mean that? And he's like, you're not just saying that to be nice? He goes, you're my sister. I don't have to be nice. He's like, see, I can't tell if you're kidding. He goes, well, obviously that's a joke. But look, I'm serious, for real. Look, I love you. I would very much like it if you stayed. She's like, I love you too. Big hugs. A brother, sister. I love them. He's like, kick ass. She's like, obviously. Because she is badass. So.
She is. I mean, the amount of hours, as he stated, that she put into her career.
I know, working 80 hours a week, and then she just left it all.
Right.
And now we know why.
Right. And just by her personality, that tells you that, yeah.
I mean, she's a tiny little thing, but she's...
Oh, she's
packing it.
Yep.
Remember, when we ended season 3, we left Preacher dazed and confused, laying in the forest. And here we are, 5 weeks later, we see Preacher scrambling eggs. Doon, doon, doon. What happened?
He's more like killing those eggs.
I know. Jack walks in the kitchen. He's like, those eggs are innocent bystanders, man. Doesn't even hear him. And he's like, you want to talk about it? And he's like, no. He goes, I'm not very good at taking no for an answer, so come on. And he's like, I haven't heard back from the private investigator for a couple of days. He goes, well, something's going to turn up. And he's like, yeah. He goes, trust me, Steve's good. As soon as he knows something, he'll call. He goes, thinking about Vince with Christopher is making me crazy. I feel so damn helpless. And he's like, still no word from Paige? He goes, no, Sally was my only contact. Obviously, she's working with Vince. Still can't believe she played me. It's like she must have been paid off, either that or she was coerced. He goes, well, I'm surprised you're not getting more out of the sheriff's department. Mike said their hands are tied. Vince is Christopher's uncle, so without Paige, his claim to guardianship is stronger than mine. He goes, well, who else knows about Christopher? Just you, Mel, Mike, Sheriff, and Connie. Everyone else thinks he's back east with Paige. It's like, okay, so what if we go public? And he's like, get the local news involved. And he goes, no. The PI said any publicity could just push Vince deeper underground. At that point, Jesus will never find Christopher. He goes, but he feels anonymous. Maybe he'll get careless. And Jack's like, yeah, making him easier to track down. Mm. And Preacher's like, look, I'm sorry that I wasn't straight with you from the beginning. And Jack's like, come on, man, I get it. I mean, you're protecting Paige and Christopher. He goes, going forward, just keep me in the loop. Maybe I can help. He goes, what if Christopher thinks I'm not even looking for him? He goes, no. He knows you love him. He knows you're not going to stop until you find him. Gives him a nice encouraging pat on the back. So I guess we can deduce from all that Sally was probably forced by Vince, threatened by Vince, to get Preacher out of the way. And that gave him the opportunity to take Christopher. And then I wonder, because we haven't talked to Connie yet, we haven't heard Connie's side of it. Did he threaten Connie? Did Connie get hurt? Did he just bring a gun and make Christopher go with him? Like, we don't know how that all panned out. We just saw him show up, but we don't actually know what happened. Kind of scary.
Well, if Vince is as bad as he is, I don't think the apple falls that far with his twin.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, said that they were into no good. They were dirty cops. So, all right, so we're back at Hope's, and Joellen is taking out some trash. She's been staying there with Hope while Doc was at the clinic, and Doc just pulled up, and he's like, hey, I would have taken the trash out. And she's like, Hope's taking a nap, so I just tidied up a bit, and now I'm gonna head home. And he's like, I really can't thank you enough for everything you've done. And she's like, it takes a village. And he goes, how was your visit with Hope? And she's like, well, I was hoping that she'd back to her old self by now, but we played 3 rounds of gin and she didn't even try to cheat. He goes, that's the thing with a traumatic brain injury, normal symptoms, memory loss, fatigue, and headaches, and they directly impact personality. He goes, well, what do the doctors say? And he's like, wait and see. She's like, okay, then. And she's like, oh, whatever happened to the young man, Denny something? And Doc's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, oh, you didn't get my message? He goes, oh, I must have missed it. While you were at the hospital with Hope, a young man checked in at the B&B. Granted, this again was 5 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole thing happened with the accident. And he goes, he said he was looking for his grandfather, Vernon Mullins. And Doc is looking at her like, he goes, well, I can't be his grandfather. I never had any children. He goes, well, that's what I thought, but he seems so sure of himself. She's like, anywho, see you later. So here we have Lizzie. Lizzie showing up. It's like, hi, Lizzie. And he's like, what you got there? He goes, I made potato soup and corn fritters for you guys. He's like, thank you. That was so, so sweet of you. He goes, I wish there was something else I could do to help. He goes, are you kidding? This is plenty. He goes, where's your boyfriend? He's like, oh, Parker? He left last week. Don't worry about him. He goes, I could have gone with him, but I decided to be on my own for a while. He goes, well, good for you. He goes, and if you have any spare time, Hope's roses are on death's door. I've been watering them, but I don't know. I think they need fertilizer or something. She goes, well, if you want, I can pull some weeds. And he was like, thank you. That's wonderful. Everything you need is out back in the garden. And, I'm going to pop over to the clinic this afternoon. Is there any way you can keep an eye on Hope? And she's like, sure. And he's like, I had no idea you were a gardener. She goes, I'm not, but that's what Google's for. She pulls her phone out so she can figure out what to do with the roses. So now we see Bree walking down the street and in Grace Valley, and she is not paying attention, not watching where she's going, as Mike is coming out of someplace with a coffee in his hand and almost runs into her. And I was like, hey. He's like, oh, you look nice. And she's like, thanks. She goes, I just had a job interview. And he's like, how did it go? She's like, she offered me the job, so it went well. He goes, that's great. Congratulations. She's like, well, I have to commit to a year, so I'm not sure I'm going to take it. He's a little apprehensive. He goes, Bree, I'm sorry about the mess with Brady. He goes, I know he told you that I have it out for him, but I don't. She goes, it's fine. I don't blame you. He goes, I know how it feels to be blindsided by someone. He goes, did one of your ex-girlfriends shoot your brother? I love her. She's so funny. He's like, no. He goes, but, if you ever want to hang out, just talk or whatever, I'm around.
Oh, I'm sure he is.
Wow, he's so smooth. What a great line there, Mike. You really need to brush up on your skills. And she's like, I thought you were going back to L.A. And he's like, I was, but then the sheriff asked me to stay, so I'm going to be here. And he's like, so what made you stay? And he's like, I like it here. The air's clean. People are nice to each other. It's beautiful. And then her cell phone rings, and she's like, oh, sorry. He's like, no problem. See you around. She's looking at her phone with trepidation And then she jams it back in her purse and walks by, not very happy. So now we're in jail because that's where Brady is. Him and his friends with his orange jumpsuits. And he's on the phone.
Where he does not belong.
No,
Isn't
he doesn't. Well,
Come on,
but
Jimmy.
they're only going on what they know.
That's true.
So he's trying to keep to himself, and he's walking by, and Jimmy is sitting on the table with a bunch of guys, and he's like, "You're looking like crap." He's like, "Jimmy." He's like, "Heard you were in here. You hear that from your police friends?" He goes, "Oh, you ain't got a lot of friends in here." He's like, "They ain't my friends." He looks so scruffy. His hair looks longer.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh, goodness. He's like, "You ain't got a lot of friends in here. A lot of guys got swept up in the raid." So Jimmy's trying to give him the lay of the land. He goes, "And they're blaming you." And he goes, "I had nothing to do with the raid, Jimmy." He goes, "If you'd taken care of Spencer like you were supposed to, the feds wouldn't be coming down on all of us." And Brady's like, "You got a point?" Jimmy's like, "Nope, no point." He gives him sort of like the shoulder, what do they call that? A shoulder check. And then another guy gets up and gives him a shoulder check. And then the other three guys get up and kind of walk away. And a guy comes up to him and he's like, he goes, "You know that guy?" And Brady's like, "Sort of." And he goes, "He's a psycho. A lot of those around here." And Brady's like, "Well, Jimmy's a little punk. He ain't gonna do nothing." And the guy kind of looks at him and chuckles. And he's like, "Yeah, you look outnumbered to me." And Brady just, he's trying to keep to himself. He just walks by, just keeps to himself. I mean, I don't know what choice he has. It's not like he can get away from these people. They're caged in together.
Exactly.
So we have a beautiful scenery shot. And Mel is walking back from wherever she was, which I'm guessing is the clinic. Maybe she's taking a break. Remember, she just met Dr. Hayek. So she heads to Jack's bar, and she runs into the sewing circle. They've perched themselves on an outdoor bench on the patio of the bar overlooking the river. What a great place to just hang out. Would you just...
I know.
I just want to go there and sit at that table and just, like, chill.
Yeah.
Just have some coffee and just relax. So we've got Muriel, who's crocheting something, and then we've got Liddy and Connie, and they're all just relaxing. They're all like, "Oh, Mel, hi," as she's walking up the ramp, and Muriel's like, "So listen, inquiring minds want to know." Now Virgin River. The internet is slow, but the gossip is fast, and it has traveled.
It has made its maker.
And she's like, "Is this new doctor as cute as they say?" And he's literally just got there that morning. So what?
He's been in town maybe, an hour?
Well, he's maybe been at the clinic for 3 hours. Because let's assume it's an early lunch. Okay? And Mel is just laughing. She's like, "Right. Who is they?" And Liddy pipes in. She goes, "Well, Selma Linton said that his smile was dazzling." And then she says, Marge Cooper says he's dreamy. That was from Muriel. And then Connie pipes in, "Marilyn Brown called dibs." And Muriel's like, "That's ridiculous, isn't it? Marilyn is married." And Muriel asks Mel, she goes, "Cameron, though, does he have a wife?" And just as she's saying that, Jack is coming up behind Mel with a tray of water glasses for the ladies. And Mel is like, I don't know. I don't think so. Does he? Who have a wife?" Jack asks. He goes, "Doc hired a very attractive doctor to fill in at the clinic." And Mel's just laughing. "So he could spend more time with Hope." And Muriel looks at Jack and she goes, "About time you got a little bit of competition, mister." And Jack looks at her and he goes, "Well, I wasn't aware a lack of competition was a concern, is it?" And Mel looks at him, and they look at each other, and they just laugh. And he goes, "Well, I'm just saying, you might want to stay on your toes." And she kind of gives him a little look. And Mel's like, "Right. Would you help me get my lunch order?" And he goes, "Yeah, I got something to show you." She goes, "Excuse me, ladies, I have to get back to work." This is my other absolute favorite scene. They don't get a lot of these scenes, but when the two of them are just adorable together, I love it. I just love it. I just think because they've been through so much. I mean, the amount of crying this woman has done.
Tell me about it.
Right? So when they get to be adorable together, it's adorable, like beyond. I just love it. So Mel and Jack are heading into the office. He grabs her by the hand and they're walking into his office. And he's like, so after I dropped you off this morning, I went by King's Pharmacy. And he grabs this big bag, King's Pharmacy. He goes, and I got you some extra prenatal vitamins, very important. And she's like, oh. He's like, a few books on high-risk pregnancies, a blood pressure cuff, that's for you. I mean, okay, Jack, she works at a clinic, honey. Do you really think she needs a blood pressure? I mean, maybe if so they have it at home, but doesn't she carry one in her purse? I'm just saying. I think he was a little overzealous on that one.
The boy is,
He's in love. Just trying to take
exactly.
care of his woman.
That's right.
And then he's like, and then the FT300 fetal Doppler. And he shows her, and she's like, he goes, after 12 weeks, we can monitor the baby's heart rate whenever we want. He goes, isn't that cool? And look at this. And she's like, Jack. And he pulls up on his computer, and she's just kind of looking at him like, oh my God, he's adorable. Like, look at him. He's so cute. Like, when he said he was all in, some men say it, but they don't live it. He's living it. He's living the all in. And he goes, okay, so this place, we should check this place out. And it's Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, and it's the Fetal Maternal Center. And he's like, it's one of the top rated neonatal facilities in the country. She goes, yeah, it's a very prestigious clinic. And she just kind of looks at him. She goes, Jack, this is so sweet. Thank you for picking up all this stuff and, researching clinics. But, and he's like, but what? What? And he goes, well, if you're stressed out about me having a high-risk pregnancy, it's okay. We can talk about it. He's like, I know, and I would talk about it. This is just me doing my homework. And she's like, okay. He goes, look, we got this. He's like, yeah, and he holds her face. Very cute. He's like, we got this. And she's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah. And he holds the other side of her face, and he's just staring at her. He does this all the time. She's like, what? And he goes, oh, I just like looking at you. And he puts her hair behind her ear, and he's just staring at her. And it's like, the one thing they have also said is that the first season, the amount of staring they had to do, they said it was obscene. They cut a lot of it out, but in order to get that right moment, you have to do, like, it might take 2 minutes of staring for 15 seconds of screen time staring. He goes, so we really got to know each other because all we did was look at each other for like an entire season and a half. So it's funny that staring at each other is so not uncomfortable for them because they have done so much of it.
Yeah.
So I think it's funny that there's like, they probably had to stare at each other for like 5 minutes for like this little scene right here. But it's like they're just so used to it. It's like, whatever. It's just, it's what we do. So he's like, have I told you how beautiful you are? And she's so cute. She's like, well, I mean, not since this morning. So, and he goes, oh, well, we need to fix that. And he just starts, and it's not like one kiss. It's like a whole bunch of kisses. They're so cute together. So I love that scene. I just think it's adorable. So we're back at Hope's house, and Lizzie is in the backyard, and she's pruning some roses. And Hope comes out, and she's like, what are you doing to Amy? And Lizzie's like, well, I told Doc I'd fertilize the roses and get rid of some of the weeds. Who's Amy? And Hope is like, points to the roses. He goes, I didn't know she had a name. She goes, they all do. Josephine, Meg, Beth. She's pointing. She goes, aren't those the sisters from Little Women? She goes, finally somebody gets it. She goes, so do you need me to get you anything? She goes, I'd like for you to drive me over to Lily's. She goes, sure, I'll call Tara and see if she's home. She goes, no, I want to visit Lily. At the cemetery or on the farm, Lizzie says. And Hope is like, why would we go there? And Lizzie's like, well, because that's where Lily is.
Oh, boy.
And Hope is like, what are you talking about? What happened to Lily? And she starts getting very upset. And Lizzie freaks out. And she's like, nothing. Lily's fine. Stay here. I'm going to wash my hands, and then we'll figure it out. And she leaves. And Hope is just like dumbfounded, like, what's going on? So Doc must be in Grace Valley, too. He puts a box in the back of his truck, answers his cell phone, and he's like, hi, Doc Mullins. And he goes, it's Lizzie. You have to come home. He goes, what? Lizzie, what happened? Is Hope okay? And she's like, she asked me to drive her to Lily's, and I mentioned the cemetery because I assumed she knew Lily died, and then I freaked out, and I told her Lily's still alive, and he's like, it's okay. Don't get worked up. I'll be on my way right now. So what do I do in the meantime? And she's like, just tell her Vernon is on his way, and he will drive her wherever she wants to go.
Oh,
Goodness. Ugh,
oh.
this is funny. So,
Oh, I love this scene. I
love
love this
this.
scene.
Oh, my God.
This is so typical of a small town that has no men.
Yep. Like, definitely the male to female ratio is clearly evident in this scene. So, Mel returns to the clinic with her lunch, and she walks in and is greeted with a lobby, foyer, foyer and everywhere full of women.
Yeah.
So she walks into the exam room, and Cameron is just shutting the door with his dapper self, and he's got his stethoscope and his suit with his tie and some files, and she's like, hey, and he's like, hey, and she's like, picked up some lunch, and he's like, oh, thanks. He's like, I don't think I have time to eat. Is it always like this? And he's going pointing to the waiting room, and he goes, you mean a waiting room full of women? He's like, yeah. And she just is kind of like very nonchalant. She's like, well, no, they're all here to meet you. And he's like, professionally speaking? She goes, no, personally speaking. And she kind of gives a funny smile, and he's looking at her like, why? And she's like, because you're new and you're young and you're nice looking. And it's like, she says it just like that, kind of like almost funny. He goes, I've only been in town less than a day. She goes, here's how Virgin River was explained to me. The internet is slow, but the gossip is fast. He goes, so I'm the gossip? She goes, mm-hmm. Why don't you eat your lunch? I'll figure out if any of these ladies need medical, in quotes, attention. He's like, no. They came here to see me. I wouldn't want to disappoint anyone. She's like, okay. Kind of like gestures. Have at it, my friend. She shuts the door to eat her lunch. And her cell phone rings. So she shuts the door and she answers it, and it's Joey. She's like, Joe, hi. She goes, you've been dodging me for a week. What is going on? She goes, well, I did leave you a message. She goes, I can hear it in your voice. Is it Jack? Are you sick? She's like, no, we're both fine. She goes, no, you're not. I can tell. She goes, do you need me to come up there? Of course not. She goes, don't be ridiculous. Tell me what's wrong. I can't. She goes, Mel, please, you're scaring me. Now, Joey, they've only got each other. And when they do something out of the ordinary, the other one is going to notice right away. Whether it's in their voice, whether it's in their actions. And yeah, Mel is waiting because if she talks to Joey, she's going to spill the beans. Since she told Jack she would wait a week, she's trying to avoid Joey until the week so then she can find... Yeah, Joey's not putting up with that. Oh my gosh. Joey's funny. And Mel is like, ugh. She's like, I'm pregnant. And Joey, she was out power walking. And she literally stops. She goes, you're pregnant? She goes, yeah, I'm pregnant. And she laughs. And she's like, and I don't know who the father is. And Joey's like, how is that possible? She goes, well, this is where she blames her. Like you suggested when I was in LA, I went and did a round of IVF. And then I came back and Jack and I got back together. By this time, Joey has sat down on a bench because this conversation is going to require everyone be sitting because Mel's already sitting down. But I think it's funny how she's like, you suggested. And Joey's like, ugh. She goes, well, I mean, however this happened. She's like, Mel, honey, this is incredible. She goes, I know. It is, isn't it? And she's like, yeah. He goes, how are you feeling? And Mel's like, I don't know. I'm still in shock, I think. She goes, first of all, I didn't think I could get pregnant again. She goes, and then, everything is so crazy with Jack and the IVF and, goodness. And Joey's like, nobody deserves this more than you. I mean, you've wanted a baby for so long. And Mel's like, yeah. She goes, I can't believe it's finally happening. As she's like barely able to talk because she's crying. Oh my. Well, Joey got told. That's not going to go over too well. You're supposed to keep a secret. We're back at the bar, and Jack gets behind the bar, and Mike is sitting there having some lunch, and he's like, hey. And he's like, hey, I ran into Bree right after her interview, and she said she got an offer. And Jack's like, oh, good for her. And he goes, you guys talk about anything besides work? And Mike's like, well, what do you mean? He goes, did you ask her out? And he goes, well, yeah. I mean, I said if she wants to hang out, I'm around. And Jack looks at him. He goes, that's it? That's the best you got? I'm around? Dude. And poor Mike. He's like, I know. I know. I don't know what it is with me, man. I, it's like I got no game. He goes, you don't need game with Bree. Just be yourself. I'm like, yeah. Hannah comes and delivers his lunch there. And he's like, okay, so any word on Brady? And Mike is like, well, he requested a bail hearing, but, courts are backed up and, he's not getting out anytime soon. And he goes, well, how much is bail? He goes, $500,000. And he goes, wow, that's steep. He goes, yeah, because he shot you and left you for dead. And that's when Jack gets a little apprehensive. And he was like, Mike's like, what? Like, dude. He goes, don't tell me you have doubts. And he's like, look, Brady is Brady, but he's not dumb. I mean, driving around with a gun in the Jeep, come on, it doesn't track. He goes, Jack, the gun was a match. And Jack's like, I don't know, something's not sitting right with me. He goes, yeah, because you're a good guy. He goes, in that level of betrayal, I don't know, you just can't wrap your head around it. And Jack's like, well, maybe. Okay, so we're back at Hope's. Now, Doc is going to make it back, but by the time he gets back, Hope is sound asleep on the couch. And Lizzie's just kind of sitting there, keeping an eye on her. Doc comes in, Lizzie runs over to him, and she's like, Doc. And they go into a separate room. He goes, what happened after we hung up? It's like, she just wanted to come inside and lie down. And he's like, did she say anything else about Lily? And she said, no, she just said she was tired. He goes, isn't that weird? She's like, I'm so sorry. I totally freaked her out. He goes, no, don't. You did the right thing. He goes, you called me and you kept Hope safe, and that's all that matters. So he's just appreciative that, she was taken care of. Oh, my. Okay, so we're back at Jack's bar, and Ricky's clearing some tables. And on the table behind him, they have a little furry friend who's decided to come visit. It's a raccoon.
Okay, this is my problem with living out there. I love this whole thing, but the wildlife situation freaks me out.
I know.
I'm sorry.
I know.
And I should be better at wildlife since I lived in the Caribbean. I was born there.
Yeah.
But it still freaks me out.
Well, you realize it's the Pacific Northwest. There's going to be bears. There's going to be raccoons. There's going to be deer. There's all kinds of wildlife there. And occasionally, because, people have infringed upon wildlife places.
Territory. I totally get that.
But having them at your dinner table.
Exactly.
Maybe a little more than you want to handle.
Exactly. I mean, I get it. We are in their space. I am not denying that. They have First Amendment rights as far as I'm concerned. But I don't want to be that up close and personal. It's one of the reasons why I never took a job in Australia, because there are too many things that can kill me.
Oh my God, I would never. I want to visit so bad, but the spiders alone are as big as a baby's head. There's like no way.
No, I've visited Australia. I love Australia.
I would love to. I would love to go. They're New Zealand.
I've been to both places.
Oh, gosh.
And I got, and the funny thing is the client that asked me to work there, in the contract stated that if I got bitten by anything or attacked by anything, they were not liable.
Oh my God.
And I basically said,
no thanks. Talk about a safety clause. Jeez.
Anyway.
Wow. Well, let's just be happy we're only dealing with the raccoon. So Ricky's clearing a table and he hears a noise, and it's kind of cute. He turns around and he gets very nervous, and he's like, easy, big fella. And he's just,
I look the comments on Preacher's face.
Preacher walks out like it's a Sunday afternoon, and butterflies are flying. And Ricky's like, there's a raccoon stealing our silverware. And he just kind of leans, because he's on the level above, and he's just like on the patio. And Preacher's like, oh yeah, that's Bandit. Yeah, he comes and goes. Now, Ricky's lived there for years. I'm surprised that he has not. But then again, maybe he hasn't worked at the bar since he got out of school. Because I think he helped out a little bit. Yeah. But I think, since he graduated, he probably works there more while he's getting ready to go into the Army, trying to save some money.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, Preacher's just like very nonchalant. They're just staring at him. And he's like, yeah. He goes, well, what are we going to do about it? And he goes, cayenne pepper, hot sauce, gallon of water, and a teaspoon of dishwashing liquid. He goes, you can't poison Bandit. He goes, relax, Ricky. It's a spray. They don't like the smell, and I should take that to boot camp. He goes, keep the guys from messing with me. He goes, what did Jack say about you enlisting? Ricky's like, he didn't say anything because I haven't told him. Now, this is the 4th season, and most of the cast doesn't really look any different. Even Lizzie doesn't look that different.
Mm-hmm.
But Ricky, he's taller. He looks more grown up now. Because, I mean, he looked like an 18-year-old high school kid. I can't remember how old he really is.
He's filled out now.
Yeah. He looks like a grown up. Like, he looks like a man, you know? Yeah. So, he's like, Ricky, how do you think he's going to feel if he finds out from somebody else? And Ricky's like, ugh, I hadn't thought about that. He goes, quit procrastinating. That's an order. And then they just take a look at the raccoon, and Preacher's like, I'll deal with Bandit. Now we're behind the B&B where Joellen is, and she's explaining there's not enough water pressure, so when can you take a look at it? Because it looks like they have a fountain that's not working. And she's like, that'll be fine, thank you. And she hangs up from her phone call, and we see Charmaine walking up. Now, Charmaine is looking much more pregnant now.
Yes.
She's definitely showing. So it's been 5 weeks, 6 weeks now, 7 weeks-ish since, well, let's see. It was 5 weeks when they went to the doctor, and then it wasn't quite a week because she told Joey before the next appointment. So it's been, say, 5 or 6 weeks of the new season.
The longest pregnancy in history.
Yeah, I think, from what I read, it's the second longest pregnancy in TV history.
Who's those first?
I don't know, and we'll find out by the time she has that baby. I will have that answer. Okay. Babies. So Charmaine is walking up, and she's talking to Joellen. She's like, hi, Charmaine. She goes, so my aunt wants to throw this baby shower. She goes, but the country club is booked, and I would love to have it on your patio. And she goes, okay, how many is the guest list? She's like, 20. She goes, that's perfect. She goes, I love your garden. I love your courtyard. And, she goes, Nick and I are quite proud of it. She goes, speaking of proud, you must be so excited about the twins. She goes, yeah, super excited and super stressed out. She's like, there's so much to do. And it's like baby brain. And she goes, I don't even know what color blue to paint the nursery. And Joellen's like, does that mean you're expecting boys?
Oh, boy.
And she's like, she goes, Jack must be thrilled. And she goes, Jack doesn't know yet. She goes, we just found out. And Joellen's like, she goes, so please don't say anything to Jack or anyone else. She's like, mum's the word. And she makes a little motion, kind of like,
the woman who is the biggest gossiper in town.
Right?
Right.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so now we're back at Jack's bar. Jack and Ricky are sitting in the Adirondack chairs right by the river. And Jack is like, did you sign your contract? And Ricky's like, not yet. And he's like, Jack, I know you want me to go to college, but this is what I want. And Jack kind of shakes his head. He goes, and Ricky's like, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but I didn't want to disappoint you. And Jack is like, you don't have to explain yourself. He goes, you're an adult. It's time you make your own decisions. And Ricky's like, wait, you're not mad? And Jack kind of chuckles. He goes, I'm not mad at you. He's like, I'm proud of you. He goes, you're following your own dreams, something I understand. Same thing happened to him. Remember, his dad wanted him to take the scholarship he got at Berkeley.
Yep.
And instead he enlisted, pissed off his father, and did 20 years in the military.
Yep.
He goes, you got to promise me one thing. He goes, when it's time for you to go to boot camp, I'm driving you and Liddy to the bus stop. And Ricky shakes his head, yeah. He goes, that'd be awesome. He goes, I'm proud of you, man. And he gives him a big dad kind of hug. He goes, make sure you spend time with your grandma because she's going to miss you. He goes, thanks, Jack, for being cool about everything. So that was like dad training, right? Mm-hmm. He's been a dad to him, He looks up to, there's a lot of men in that town that Ricky's been able to look up to, but Jack is the number one. Yep. So it's the heart to hearts. He's had a few with Preacher, but I feel like the real heart-to-hearts come with Jack. He's guided him, which is it's kind of cute in a way that he's going into the Marines, because it's like in a way following in his sort of dad's footsteps.
Yep.
Which is just so sweet. So we have more beautiful scenery. Love the scenery. So here we are at the clinic at the end of the evening. And so Mel's like, have you seen Gloria Gold's chart? Her blood test results just came in. And Cameron goes to grab it, and he's like, anemia. And she goes, yeah, you're good. He goes, well, she was textbook, but thanks for the compliment. He's like, thank you. He goes, man, today was great. And she's looking at him like, you've lost your mind, sir. Like, eyebrows really, really high. She goes, what? And he goes, she's like, are you always this positive? And he was like, oh, it's genetic. My mom is an event planner, and my dad is the most optimistic person in the world. Mix the two together, and this is what you get. She's like, uh-huh, makes perfect sense. And she's being very cordial with him, but not in any overt way. It's kind of, like she's not even giving him, like she doesn't look at him in any way except he's just a guy that works in the office.
She has to get to know him.
Yeah.
It's a getting to know you sort of thing.
Like everybody else in town is like drooling over him. And it's almost like, I feel like he's looking at her one way and she is not looking at him the same way.
No, Mel has a few other things on her plate to worry about.
Well, and plus she has Jack.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't need to look at anybody else. I'm sorry. So he's like, how about you? Are you a pessimist or an optimist? She gives a very real answer here. She goes, well, I would say I'm half optimist, half realist. And he's like, which means? She goes, which means I'm a hopeful control freak. There's a lot of debate going on up in here. And she's just back, like she acknowledges the conversation. Like she's very cordial. She has a nice conversation, but she's very focused on whatever it is she's doing. Like she's not like everybody else who's just like hanging on his every word and staring googly eyes at him. Like, what do they call him? Like heart eye emoji at him,
Mm-hmm.
like cartoon character. And he's like, great. He goes, so try this. At the end of every shift, I like to ask whoever I'm with what the high point of their day was. She's like, okay, high point of my day. She's like, would have to be when I convinced Mrs. Tilden that psoriasis is not contagious. And they both laugh. She goes, what about you? He goes, when you said I was attractive. She's like, oh, wow, okay, well, I didn't say that. And he's like, well, you said I was nice looking, but we all know what that meant. She goes, yeah, you're delirious and you need to take a break. He goes, actually, I was going to go out for a run. She goes, oh, the Blue Creek Trail is really good. It's my favorite. He goes, oh, you run? She goes, every chance I get. He goes, well, maybe I'll see you on the trail sometime. She's like, yeah. He's like, good night. She's like, good night. See you tomorrow. And then she kind of like makes a weird look on her face. Like, what's that about?
Yeah.
Like, not even cluing in that the second he introduced himself to her, you could tell it was a one-way street there.
Yep. Somebody's got the hots for Mel.
Mm-hmm. I mean, understandable. There's not many women their age in town. I mean, his prospects are Mel, Paige is gone, Hannah, there's maybe a couple waitresses, but other than that, I don't think there's anybody eligible. Like, and he doesn't know she's with Jack. I don't think he knows that. He's just met Mel. It's not like, hi, this is Mel who's with Jack. It's not like that's how they introduce her.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back at Doc's, and Hope is asleep. She's waking up on the couch from where she laid down when the whole thing happened with Lily. Doc's just sitting there reading, and she's like, where's Lizzie? She goes, oh, Connie took her home. And she's like, oh, my head is killing me. He goes, can you bring me some aspirin? And he goes to get some. And she kind of like, is like she realizes something. And she takes the aspirin, and he's just sitting next to her on the couch, just being very sweet. He's like, you got it? She's like, yeah. Puts the glass down. He's like, Vernon, when did Lily die? And she has tears in her eyes. And Vernon kind of like, uh-oh.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, how did you know? And she's like, Lily was the queen of sending cards. No matter how mad she was at me, she would have sent at least one. And he kind of chuckles. He goes, I had forgotten about that. There's every occasion, whether good or bad. My favorite was Groundhog Day, she said. Who does that? He goes, only Lily. And it wasn't just the card. The look on poor Lizzie's face when I asked her about Lily. He's like, yeah. And they're playing some very sad music.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, please tell me what happened. He's like, okay. So sad. Because she's got to hear it again. He goes, when you were in South Carolina, Lily was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He goes, she wanted to tell you in person, and I respected her wishes. As Hope's beginning to cry. He goes, and then one day I went out to visit her and Tara. Tara was making dinner, and Lily took a nap. And while she was sleeping, she suffered a stroke, and she never woke up. She died peacefully, I promise you.
Oh, and the
Yeah.
look.
He goes, she didn't suffer. I know Hope's just like,
Hope just breaks down.
so sad. He goes, and the day of your accident, you were on your way home for her funeral. And on your way here from the airport, you were on your way from the airport.
And so they start to play.
Yeah. Sad, sad music.
Mm-hmm.
Very poignant. The words of the music, it's like they have people that write the songs for the show. There's a lot of that, but there's also songs that are just very, very appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So we're back at Mel's cabin, and Mel and Jack are sitting across the way. That little, what do you call it? I don't know. It's like a little, you have to walk all the way around the lake. It's the place that they were when it was her birthday and he gave her sushi.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's just like a little area you can have a lunch there. You can just hang out there. They've had drinks there before.
Yeah,
oh, I love this scene too. I love this scene. They have a lot of really cute scenes with them together in this episode. It's like finally you're giving them a little bit of peace.
Mm.
So and where they're standing, the cabin is in the background from across the lake. So it's really great. So he's on the phone. And she had walked over, and she brought him a beer. And he's like, hey, aw, thanks. She's like, for you. And he takes a sip, and she's like, work was good. And she's like, listen, so I told Joey. She just
out with it.
Mm-hmm. And she's like, he's like, what? She goes, I'm sorry. She goes, I was talking to her on the phone, and she started to panic, and I didn't want her to worry. And I couldn't do that to her. So he goes, it's okay. I get it. It's like, okay. He goes, well, listen, I promise that we will not tell anyone until we are ready. He goes, well, I'm going to hold you to that. Okay. And she's like, yeah. He goes, in the meantime, I was thinking maybe we could fly down to LA. And she's like, okay, why? She's laughing. She goes, I just spoke to that clinic, see if they are taking any new patients. And they are. And I thought we could do a consult. And she's like, okay, well, I think that in the future, if we end up needing additional care, sure, but for now, I'm really comfortable with Dr. Lorton. And he goes, I just don't feel like I can sit back and wait for something bad to happen. And she looks at him, and it's like she's got to explain something that he doesn't understand. He's not been where she's been. He's not been through what she's been through. And unless you tell him, he is not going to know. And so she has to kind of catch him up to emotionally where she's at so he understands. Because if he doesn't understand, he's going to keep suggesting things and doing things and things that maybe are not what she needs. Yep. So she has to do some catching him up. And she's like, look, Mark and I, she goes, we did everything by the books. She's like, we had the best prenatal care and we still lost our baby. So if I focus on the what ifs, and she's practically ready to cry at this point, she's like, then I'm not going to be able to function.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I get it. Okay. He goes, I don't want that to happen to us. She's like, no. He goes, I'm just trying to support you. She's like, I know. She's like, and that makes me feel loved, and that's all I need right now. And this scene right here where they're kind of standing there holding, he's got his hand on the side of her face and her hand is on his arm. And again, they use that in a lot of promotional stuff because they never did like photo shoots or promo anything until season 6. And so every picture that you see advertising the show or a scene or whatever, it's always a screen capture, a moment in time of some scene that was, between them or whatever. And this happens to be a very famous one.
Yep. It's a good scene.
Yeah.
And yes.
And everybody always jokes. They're like, they always do the double kiss. It's never just one kiss. If you notice, they kiss and then they kiss again. Like
You
almost
see, that's information that that's something I never observed. I just thinking it's a kiss,
right. But
but
if you notice, they almost
uh,
always, there's been and it's funny because people just notice things because they're observant, but yeah,
mhm.
there's a lot of double kisses with them. See, now that I've said it, now you're going to notice it more. I'm sorry. I've
Yes,
planted
yes,
the seed.
yes, you have. Hmm.
So, but I always like he'll kiss and then they'll kiss again, or he likes to kiss and say something and then kiss again, which is very cute. So now we're back at Doc's and he's having a drink. It's I guess Hope maybe went to bed or something, and there's a knock at the door, and he's looking at
Hmm.
the time like it's still light out. It's not that late, Doc. I mean, geez, I know you're in your 70s, but come on. And he goes, "Nope, sorry, we're not interested." He goes, "Sir, I'm not here to sell you anything." He goes, "Rose Miller gave me your name." And you see this young man just standing at the door in a nice button up shirt. And he's like, "What?" He's like, "Look, you've got the wrong Vernon Mullins." He goes, "The only Rose Miller I ever knew died 40 years ago." And he pulls a picture out of his pocket and he hands it to Doc. And Doc looks at it. And it's him and a woman with
Hmm.
long hair. And he goes, "Where did you get this?" He goes, "She said you might not believe me. She wanted you to have it." And he looks like deer in headlights. He's like,
Hmm.
"Rose? Rose is alive?" He goes, "Yeah, she's my grandmother. And I'm your grandson." And Doc is like, what? Like shock. Like if you want to
Yep.
see shock, there's Doc.
Hmm.
So now we're on the side of the cabin and Jack is cutting logs, splitting logs with an axe. Like, there's a lot of logs there, dude. Do you really need to cut more? But he's a man. He's cutting logs and Preacher pulls up. And Preacher's like, "I need you to see something the PI sent." He goes, "What's wrong?" And he shows him. He shows him a guy at a counter talking to someone, and it's Vince. Jack's like, "What am I looking at?" He goes, "Just keep watching." And he zooms in on it, zooms in on the guy's face who happened to look up at the camera. And just then, Jack, the look on his face is like,
Hmm.
"What?" And it's like a realization. So now
Yeah.
we're in a flashback. Jack is flashing back to the night he got shot. He's heard something. He comes out of his office. He goes into the bar and he sees Vince standing there. All the tables are, all the chairs are up on the tables like they're closed. And he walks into the bar and he sees Vince. And then it goes black. And then the next scene, you see Jack grab a knife because he's behind the bar. He grabs a knife and he holds it next to him, kind of like hiding it as he walks up to him. And then you see Vince holding a gun. And every time there's a new scene, it's like it goes black. And then it's a flash. And then it goes black. So he sees Vince holding the gun up. Then he sees Vince down. And he sees Vince shoot.
Hmm.
And Jack, it's like we're back to reality. And Jack is like, "Who is that?" And Preacher's like, "It's Vince, the guy who took Christopher." And Jack looks up and he's like, shock. He goes, "So it wasn't Brady." And Preacher's like, "What?" He goes, "Brady didn't shoot me." And he looks at Preacher. "Vince did." And Preacher looks at the picture and looks at Jack. And Jack is just like shocked.
Hmm.
So we're back at the prison. And Brady's just trying to stay away from everybody. He's sitting by himself at a bench reading a book. And that guy who came up to him after he was speaking to Jimmy, kind of just trying to, chat a little with him. But, he tries to keep to himself. He comes over and he kind of wants to have a little talk. And he sits down next to Brady. And he's like, "How's it going?" He goes, "Yeah, could be better." And the guy's like, "Yeah, it's tough in the beginning." He goes, "Well, it's not my first stint, and I don't plan on being here much longer." Now, Brady's thinking, maybe this guy's okay. I don't really want to talk to anybody. I don't really want to get close to anybody. But I don't want to piss anybody off either. So it's like you kind of have to be cordial. It's a very fine line you walk in jail. And the guy's looking over at all those Jimmy and his buddies as he's looking at Jimmy and the guys walking toward them. Brady's back is to them, and he kind of looks over and he goes, "Yeah, them." And so Brady stands up and he sees the guys. Now they've got a knife that they've made, a shiv, if you're a jail person. Um, and Jimmy's like, "You earned this." And he goes to swing at Brady, and Brady's dodging him, and he's getting out of his way, and he's taking down Jimmy. He's fighting with him, and he gets the knife away from him, and he holds it to his neck, and he's like, next time you come at me, I ain't going to be so nice. Because remember, he was in the military. I mean, he can fight.
Mm-hmm.
So he has Jimmy's knife, and he pushes Jimmy away. And the guy who was sitting with him is now standing behind him, and Jimmy and the three other guys are standing in front of him. And Jimmy stands up, and he kind of like, they're face to face. And just as Brady turns around to walk away, the guy who had been sitting with him, who faked befriended him, just stabs him in the stomach.
Yeah.
He goes, Jimmy's my cousin, you son of a bitch. And he pulls the knife out, and he walks away. And Brady's just standing there bleeding, and he goes down. He's got the knife in his hand, and a guard yells, inmates on the ground. And then they're yelling, like, secure the yard, inmate down, we need medic stat, we need backup. And that's how it ends.
Mm-hmm. Well, we knew he was going to get into some kind of trouble. Not trouble he was inviting, but we knew that something would happen.
Oh yeah.
As such.
Oh yeah.
With Jimmy there, we knew something was going to happen because Jimmy's out for revenge.
Well, and Jimmy, like he said, when the raid happened, a lot of guys got scooped up, and that's where they all are. I mean, Brady is not in good company. And it's really, I mean, it's not like they're going to put him in protective custody. They think he shot Jack.
No. Exactly.
He's not going to get any special treatment. Now, unfortunately, Jack had a memory flashback about an hour too late.
Exactly.
And now, Jack is going to feel as guilty as possible.
As guilty as they come.
The evidence was the evidence. Yes, he said the gun wasn't his that was found in his Jeep. But the gun was found in his Jeep. Now,
the question, how did the gun get there?
Somebody planted it, just like Brady said. Somebody planted it.
Yeah,
it's just a matter of breaking down exactly how and what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my goodness. Crazy. So, there you go. So, the episode was Be My Baby.
Yes.
So, yeah, I don't know. Interesting. I didn't hear the song, the song Be My Baby. I don't recall hearing that song in the episode, but we have a baby daddy drama. We've got Jack remembering. Hope now is aware that Lily died. Denny is in town. So there's always so much. I mean, every storyline has like major shifting happening. And this is only the beginning of season 4. Like, this is day 1 of the season. There's like 9 more. 9 more episodes. So, oh my. So that was a good one. It was a lot of cute scenes. Sorry, Brady, that you got stabbed. You got shivved in jail. That happens. Poor guy. Now, hopefully, Jimmy will pay for that. Or the other guy, just for threatening him, and then the other guy for actually doing it.
Exactly.
I don't know. I'd love to see Jimmy just stay in jail forever. He's going to be there a while.
Yes, but he's got more trouble to make for us.
Oh, yes. He is full of trouble with a capital T. All right. Well, there you go. Season 4, episode 1 in the can, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Gigi, for another fun episode of Virgin River.
Can't wait for the next one.
Yep, and thank you for people that listen. We really appreciate it. We've I first came up with this idea, I said to Gigi, I'm like, this would be something fun to do while we wait for season 6, and she agreed. I know, probably reluctantly in the beginning. Hopefully, you're not as reluctant now as you were in the beginning. I thought it would be fun. I mean, we talk about the show anyway. Not that, anybody cares what we have to say, but apparently, we've gotten a lot of listeners lately. So maybe more people care. I don't know. I mean, I said when we first did it that I'd be happy if 100 people listened. And we've got a lot more than 100 people. So I'm glad that people are enjoying it. So far, positive reviews. So, thanks everybody for listening, and we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. Try to bring some behind the scenes, some little facts, little tidbits, and have some fun, even when the scenes suck and it's hard and all that. But, you
Yep.
know, it makes it fun when there's really fun things going on and we laugh, because we
Yeah.
definitely got to laugh. Life's rough
We do.
sometimes, so you got to find the humor.
Yes, you do indeed.
So thank you, everybody, for listening.
Okay,
We
folks.
really, really
Au revoir.
appreciate it. All right. Well, thanks, Gigi. And until next time, bye-bye.